Good evening, students. Welcome to Sankalp learning classes. Yes, I hope all are ready to listen the class. Yes, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಎಸ್, ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೇನನ್ನ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ? ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಲೈಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಸೊ ಇನ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಲರ್ನ್ಡ್ about some important life processes. In that first one, that is about the nutrition, right? So what is nutrition and the types of nutrition? So in that autotrophic nutrition ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ವಿ, and we learnt about the photosynthesis process. In that, the next one, heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic alva. So heterotrophic nutrition type. So and again the nutrition in amoeba and nutrition in human beings. The very important topic that we learned, that is the nutrition in human beings, how the digestion takes place and how the complex food materials that convert into simpler forms. So these all points that we studied in the last class, right? So today we are going to start the next important life process, that is about the respiration, right? So how do you define the respiration? Common agi ನಾವು ಈ ವರ್ಡ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೇವೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? So what is the meaning of the respiration? How do you define the respiration? Respiration is the process by which organic molecules break down in the cells of the body with the help of oxygen and release the energy. See here, the oxygen. So we take the oxygen through our respiratory system, so to the lungs. So we take in the oxygen, and that oxygen is used to break down the organic molecules and which releases the carbon dioxide, and energy is also released, right? So this process completely known as the respiration. Okay, so you have to define the respiration like this. Then, so there are mainly two types of the respiration. So you can divide the respiration based on the requirement of the oxygen. So oxygen is involved in that or not, based on this two types of the respiration. So the first one is aerobic respiration and the second one is anaerobic respiration. What is this aerobic respiration? So aerobic respiration andre ಏನು? Here, in the presence of oxygen, glucose is converted into pyruvate. Sorry, in the first step, glucose is converted into pyruvate in the cytoplasm. In the presence of oxygen, pyruvate converted into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So that is the aerobic respiration. See here, glucose, that is the organic molecule, right? So when the glucose break down, then only we get the energy, that contains the 6 carbon atom. So in the cytoplasm, glucose that break down into pyruvate. Okay, so glucose enagatte first step alli pyruvate, so that is the 3 carbon compound, pyruvate agi convert agatte. Then this pyruvate, in the presence of oxygen, so in the presence of the oxygen, the pyruvate breakdown and which is converted into carbon dioxide, water, and large amount of energy is released. So this is called as the aerobic respiration. So this step is same in aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So the glucose that convert into pyruvate, this step is same in both aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. So then the pyruvate in the presence of the oxygen, pyruvate, that is in the presence of the oxygen, that convert the pyruvate into carbon dioxide, water, and the large amount of energy is released. Okay. Then what is anaerobic respiration? What is anaerobic respiration? So in the anaerobic respiration, so the first step is same. Glucose that converted into glucose that is converted into what? That is pyruvate. That is the 3 carbon compound. Then in the absence of oxygen, the pyruvate that is converted into ethanol, and carbon dioxide, and the small amount of energy is released. Okay. So commonly this process takes place in the yeast cell. So in the fermentation process, the same step that takes place in the yeast cell, so which produces the ethanol, that is the alcohol, carbon dioxide, and the energy is produced. Okay. Anaerobic respiration means here glucose that is converted into pyruvate, that is same in aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. In the second step, in the absence of oxygen, pyruvate that is converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. So in yeast cell during the fermentation, so this process will takes place. Okay. Then sometimes in our body, when the oxygen availability is very less, in our muscle cells, this pyruvate that is converted into, that will be converted into lactic acid and energy. So when the oxygen is very less in our cells, so these muscle cells, especially the muscle cells, they convert the pyruvate into lactic acid and energy. Okay, so that is the anaerobic respiration. Then how do you write the difference between the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration? Here, aerobic respiration, so that takes place, so that break down the glucose in the presence of the oxygen. Okay. And anaerobic respiration, which break down the glucose, or which break down the pyruvate in the absence of the oxygen. Okay, that is the first difference. Write the two difference or three difference. Means second difference, so in case of aerobic respiration, large amount of energy is released. In case of anaerobic respiration, small amount of energy is released. Okay. In case of anaerobic respiration, there is less energy compared to the aerobic respiration. Then the third important one is, what are the products? Here aerobic respiration will produce the carbon dioxide, water, and the energy. In case of anaerobic respiration, ethanol is produced and carbon dioxide and energy is produced. So that is the very important difference. Yes, this is the flow chart of the breakdown of glucose molecules in various pathway. So one of the important one, glucose, that is the 6 carbon molecule. So in the cytoplasm, where the conversion of glucose into pyruvate takes place in the presence of the, in the cytoplasm, and which is converted into pyruvate and energy. Okay, that is the 3 carbon molecule. So this is the 6 carbon molecules and this one is the 3 carbon molecule. Then see here, in the presence of oxygen, this pyruvate that is converted into carbon dioxide and water and energy in the mitochondria. So this breakdown of the pyruvate that takes place in the mitochondria. Remember this point. Then absence of oxygen. When the oxygen is when the oxygen is not present, so this breakdown of pyruvate that will not require oxygen is converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide energy in the absence of oxygen commonly takes place in the yeast cell. Sometimes lack of oxygen in our body in the muscle cells. So the pyruvate that is converted into lactic acid and energy, that is the 3 carbon molecule. Okay. So this is how the aerobic and anaerobic respiration, that is the breakdown of the glucose molecules, takes place in the various pathways. Okay. Then the human respiratory system. So different organisms use the different type of breathing method. For example, skin and gills in the form of aquatic organisms, they use the gills. So these all are the different organs, but the human beings, they use the special well organized system that is called as the respiratory system. Okay. What it includes, respiratory system ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ, for example, fish that is in the water, which is living in the water and which use the gills for the respiration, and frogs, um, they use the skin and lungs for their respiration. So the different organisms develop the different types of the respiratory method. Here in human beings, we have well developed respiratory system. Okay. So what it contains? So the air passes through the nasal passage, then enter into the pharynx, then into the larynx, then into the trachea, and this trachea that will form the 2 bronchi and small bronchioles, and the alveoli, that is the sac like structure which is present at the end of this, at the end. So these are the sac like structure. See here, air passes through the nasal passage, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and the alveoli. So this is the air pathway, how it moves in the respiratory system. Okay. Here, the alveoli provide the surface where the exchange of the gases takes place. Before that, when the air enter into the nasal passage, so it contains some tiny hairs and the mucus which trap the dust and small microorganisms which is present in the air. Okay. So the next air moves to the next part of the respiratory system, and finally it reaches the alveoli. See here, the alveoli provides a surface where the exchange of the gases can take place. The walls of the alveoli contain extensive network of the blood vessels. See here, air passes through the different parts of the respiratory system. The first one is the nasal passage, then pharynx and the larynx, then trachea like this, cartilaginous, and which become 2 branches that is called as bronchi, and again this bronchi that will become small branches that is called as bronchioles, then finally alveoli. Okay, so alveoli, this part where the exchange of the gases takes place. So this is the pathway how air moves in the respiratory system. Then So it contains extensive network of the blood vessels. Here you can see the extensive network of the blood vessels here. So this is the alveoli. So see here, this is the alveoli which contain the oxygen, and the blood vessels which carries the deoxygenated blood, means which contain the carbon dioxide. Oxygen diffuse into this blood which is present in the blood vessel, and the carbon dioxide diffuse into the alveoli where the exchange of gases takes place. Now this blood which carries the oxygen, now it is pure oxygenated blood that moves to the heart. Okay, so this is how the exchange of the gases takes place in the alveoli. The blood brings carbon dioxide from the rest of the body that is released into the alveoli. The carbon dioxide, so that is carried through the blood to the alveoli of the lungs, and the oxygen in the alveoli air is taken up by blood and alveoli blood vessels to the transported to the cells in the body. So the oxygenated blood that is transported cells present in the body. Okay, so ಇಷ್ಟ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಾ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. How the exchange of gases that takes place in the alveoli of the lungs. Then mechanism of breathing. See here, when we breathe in, just you breathe in. So what happens? What are the changes you can observe? So many changes we can observe in the chest region, right? We lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm. See here, when we breathe in, the our diaphragm, so it is the dome shaped structure. So this is the diaphragm. So when we breathe, so this is the breathe out. So when we breathe in, the diaphragm become flat. So here the diaphragm become flat, and the chest region, so that will become expanded, right? The chest cavity becomes larger as a result. Because of this, air is sucked out and fill the expanded alveoli. So this is how the diaphragm become flat, and the chest region that is increased. See, inhaling, inhaling, exhaling, that you can observe. Okay, so this is how the breathing that changes the chest region. Then in human beings, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has very high affinity of oxygen. The respiratory pigment that is the hemoglobin, which carry the oxygen, which binds the oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscles, the hemoglobin that is present in the RBC. Okay, and carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than the oxygen is, and hence the mostly transported in the dissolved form in the in our blood. So that is transported in the form of dissolved form. So that is in our blood. So this is how the exchange of gases and the human respiratory system that works in our body. Yes, human respiratory system, and what is the pathway of air in our respiratory system, and what is the function of the alveoli, how the exchange of the gases that takes place in the alveoli. So here in this diagram also you can see the extensive network of the blood vessels which is present around the alveoli. Then mechanism of breathing. So here in this diagram also you can see when you breathe in, so how the diaphragm contracts and how the chest reaching, so which increases its chest cavity. When you breathe out you can see the chest region, the changes that occur in the chest region. Okay, so that is about the mechanism of the breathing. Then the very important topic, that is about the transportation. What is transportation? So in a common word, so we use this transportation. Transportation in human beings, the main the transport system in human beings is the circulatory system. Here, transportation means transportation of the carrying the some important materials, nutrients or the other things from one part of the body to the other part of the body when you compare the transportation to our body. Then what is the transportation in general? In general, so that is the transfer of the materials or anything from one place to the another place. That is in general. So in human body, so there should be a circulatory, there should be a transportation facility, right? So transport the nutrients from one part to the other part, oxygen from the one part to the other part. So the circulatory system, so which includes the blood arteries, veins and capillaries and heart. So the circulatory system in our body, that includes the blood. Mainly blood carries the nutrients and the other excretory materials from one part of the body to the other part, and the arteries, veins and capillaries, so these are the tube like blood vessels which carry the blood, and heart which pump the blood to the different parts of the body, which that is the muscular organs. So these all are present in the circulatory system of the human beings. Okay, so blood, what is the function of the blood? Mainly, blood transport the food, oxygen, and the waste products. It consists of plasma, RBC, WBC, and the platelets. Here, just imagine this is the blood. The main thing is about the plasma. So, in the plasma, all the cells are present. That is RBC. So, WBC, white blood cells, red blood cells, and the platelets. So these are present in the cell. Okay, so sorry, these are present in the blood. So plasma, RBC, and WBC platelets are present in the blood. Then here also in this diagram also you can see the platelets and the WBC and the RBC. Then what is the function of the plasma? Which transports the carbon dioxide, food, water, and some nitrogenous waste. Plasma, very, very important. What is the function of the plasma in our body? Which transport the carbon dioxide, food, water, and some nitrogenous waste. So these are carried by the plasma, and the red blood cells transport the oxygen, and the white blood cells which kills the harmful microbes and protect our body, which kills the microbes. And the platelets help in the clotting of blood and prevent the loss of blood during the injury. Okay, so these are the functions of the different constituent of the blood, which contain the plasma, RBC, WBC and platelets. Plasma transport the carbon dioxide that should be excreted from our body, food and water, and some nitrogenous waste. RBC, which transport the oxygen. You know that why RBC is able to transport the oxygen? Anybody tell me? Why RBC is able to transport the oxygen? Because it contains the hemoglobin, which is responsible for the, which have the affinity towards the oxygen. Then WBC, which kills the microbes, and platelets, which helps in the clotting of the blood. Then the important topic, that is about the heart, the diagram of heart, that is very important, and how the circulation takes place in the heart, that is also very important topic. Okay, yes, it is a muscular organ which pumps the blood to all the parts of the body. It is the muscular organ. It has four chambers. So can you identify the four chambers in the heart? Here you can find the right atrium. This is the right atrium, and two upper chambers and two lower chambers. So right atrium and the left atrium and the lower chambers are called as ventricles. Upper chamber, that is the atria, and the lower chambers, that is called as the ventricle. Here you can find, which is present in the right, that is called as right atrium, and which is present in the left, that is called as left atrium. Then right ventricle and the left ventricle. So these are the four chambers of the heart. So the human beings, the mammals, which contain the four chambered heart. Then since the ventricles pump the blood to the different organs, its walls are very thicker than atria. See here, this is the question. So how they ask the give reason question. The ventricles have the thick wall compared to the atria. So what is the reason behind this? How do you give the reason for this question? Ventricles which has the thicker walls compared to the atrium. Because the ventricles should pump the blood different organs. Its walls are thicker than the atria. So these ventricles, they pump the blood. So just they receive the blood, and also which pump the blood to the different parts of our body. So they should have the thicker walls than the atria, because to hold the pressure that is created by the ventricles. Here, the left and right chambers are separated by septum. It prevents the mixing of oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. See here, you can find the septum. Septum ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ನಿಮಗೆ? ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? Septum, see here, which divides the right and left parts of the heart, so that there is no mixing of the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood takes place. See here. See the diagram. The diagram is very, very important for your board exam. See, let us learn how the circulation that takes place in the human heart, how the heart that pumps the blood to the different parts of our body. So the circulation, so we are learning now. See the sentence, oxygen rich blood from the lungs comes to the vault upper chamber of the heart on the left, that is called as left atrium. The left atrium relaxes when it is collecting this blood. It then contracts while the next chamber. See here, when the left atrium, this is the left atrium which receives the oxygenated blood, left atrium which receives the oxygenated from the pulmonary veins, so that is from the lungs. Okay, so which oxygenated blood means which contain the oxygen alva, oxygen iruvanta ಒಂದು blood. So when it contract, which moves to the ventricle, when it contract, it moves to the blood that moves to the ventricle. So when the muscular left ventricle contracts, its turn, the blood pumped out of the different parts through the aorta. See here, this is the oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood means every cell and tissues, they need the oxygenated blood alva. Oxygenated blood ಏನು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, lungs ಇಂದ pulmonary vein through, ಪಲ್ಮನರಿ ವೇನ್ ಥ್ರೂ ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ಏಟ್ರಿಯಮ್ಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಅಪ್ಪರ್ ಚೇಂಬರ್. ದೆನ್ ದ ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ವೆಂಟ್ರಿಕಲ್, ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಲೋವರ್ ಚೇಂಬರ್. ಸೊ ಲೋವರ್ ಚೇಂಬರಿಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ದೆನ್ ದ ವೆಂಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ದಟ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ push the blood to the different parts of the body through the aorta. See here, can find the aorta here. The oxygenated blood that is carried to the different parts of the body through the aorta. So that is called as the circulation of the oxygenated blood. Then how the circulation of the deoxygenated blood takes place? Deoxygenated blood circulation in the body. Here just comment which part of the heart that receives the deoxygenated blood. The part of the heart, which chamber of the heart which receives the deoxygenated blood. Here, vena cava, so which collects the blood, deoxygenated blood from the all the parts of the body, and they pour into the right atrium, the blood that is poured into the right atrium. Then when the right atrium contracts, when the blood that moves to the right ventricle. Okay, so you know that the ventricles which have the thick walls compared to the atria. See here, now the right atrium which contains the right ventricle which contains the blood that contracts, and blood present in the ventricle that moves to the pulmonary artery. So pulmonary artery means this blood contains the carbon dioxide that should get purified. So this carbon dioxide should be eliminated from our body. So this pulmonary artery that carries the carbon dioxide contain blood to the carbon dioxide containing blood to the purification, that is in the lungs. Purification that takes place in the lungs. Purification means removal of the carbon dioxide and the oxygen that is entering into the blood. As the right atrium contracts, the corresponding lower chamber, the right ventricle dilates. Dilates means they receive they expand. Okay. This transfers the blood to the right ventricle, which in turn pumps it into the lungs for the oxygenation. So, as I said, the purification, the removal of the carbon dioxide that or oxygenation process that takes place in the lungs, since the blood flows through the twice in one cycle called as the double circulation. So what is double circulation? So what we learned, the process, how the movement of the blood which flows in the left and right parts of the heart, that is called as separately, that is called as the double circulation. What is double circulation, and explain it? This is one of the 5 mark question. And draw the neat label diagram of the heart, that is also a one of the important question. So this is the schematic representation of the how the blood moves in the different parts of the body. That is the, this is oxygenated blood. Okay. So that is carried from the pulmonary vein from the lungs. Just imagine this is the lung. From the lungs, oxygenated blood that is poured into the left atrium, that is the upper chamber. When the upper chamber contracts, the ventricle dilates, the ventricle size increases, and the blood that moves to the ventricle. Okay. Then when the ventricle they contract, the oxygenated blood which move to the different parts of the body, and the different cells they receives the blood which containing the oxygen, so through the capillaries, means the each cell that receives the oxygenated blood through the capillaries. Okay, that is the very important thing. Then what about the deoxygenated blood? Again, one more pathway we have to learn. One more pathway means, again, the deoxygenated from the cells or the tissues. So that is poured into the left right atrium. Then the blood moves to the right ventricle. Then the oxygenated blood, so sorry, deoxygenated blood that should be moved to the, that should be moved to the lungs for its purification. Here the blood that is that contain the carbon dioxide that is carried to the um, upper chamber of the heart, that is the right atrium, then into the ventricle, then it moves to the lungs for the oxygenation. So this is how the exchange of the gases that takes place in the human body. I hope you got this point. Okay, we'll move to the next part of this topic. Then what about the hearts of mammals, birds and reptiles and amphibians and fishes? You know that mammals and birds, they have four chambered heart. So four chambered upper atria and the lower ventricles that we have studied. So in birds also it is same. In birds also we can find the four chambered heart. Then, so this four chamber heart which prevents the mixing of oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. So there is no mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. so that provides the more oxygen supply to the cells. This is necessary because they need more energy to maintain their body temperature. So this the separation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, that is very important for mammals and birds. Why? Because they need more energy to maintain their body temperature. So they have the constant body temperature. Mammals and birds, they have constant body temperature. It do not change with the change in the environment. ಸೊ ನೀವು ಮ್ಯಾಮಲ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಬರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದು ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟಿಗೆ ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅದು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆದಾಗೆ ಬಾಡಿ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ to maintain the temperature, the mammals and birds, they need more energy that is supplied by the oxygenate separate circulation of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. Then what about the amphibians and fishes, reptiles? Reptiles have the three-chambered heart. Reptiles also have the three-chambered heart, and amphibians also three-chambered, but fishes, they have two-chambered heart, one ventricle and the one auricle. And in case of reptiles, there is an exception, crocodile, which is having the four-chambered heart, but the remaining reptiles, they have three-chambered heart. So amphibians, for example, frogs, they have the three-chambered heart. So in this type of heart, so there is a mixing of two atria are present and only one ventricle is present. So in one ventricle, there is a mixing of the blood, oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood takes place. Yes. So the fishes have two-chambered heart and the blood is oxygenated in the gills. So they have gills and through the gills they get oxygenated. So this is the three-chamber heart where the mixing of the both blood, here this is the oxygenated and this is deoxygenated. The mixing of the blood takes place in the three-chambered heart. Then the very important is arteries, veins and capillaries. So what are these arteries? I hope you heard this word. Arteries are the vessels which carry blood away from the heart to the various organs of the body. Since the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure, arteries have thick and elastic walls. So here the give reason question. Arteries have thick elastic walls. Give reason. Give reason question. Please note down this. Give reason anta keltare. Arteries have thick elastic walls because the arteries, from the arteries, the blood emerges from the high pressure. So from the heart under high pressure. So the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure. So this definition you have to write. So the arteries have the thick and elastic walls. Then what is vein? So veins, they collect the blood from the different organs and that bring back to the heart. Okay. So that is called as veins. There are pulmonary veins and the pulmonary arteries. So like this. So these veins that carry the they do not need thick walls because the blood is not longer under the pressure. So these veins, they collect the blood from the different organs and bring back to the heart. So always remember, veins, they bring the heart, bring the blood to the heart. Okay, always the, see here, pulmonary veins which carries the oxygenated blood to the heart. It is bringing the blood to the heart. Then see here, arteries. Always arteries, they carry the blood away from the heart. Arteries always carry the blood away from the heart. Okay. That point you have to remember. Arteries and the veins. So veins, they do not have the thick arteries because the blood that no longer under pressure. Okay. So that is about the veins. Then the last thing is about the capillaries. So what is this capillary? See here, this is the artery. So which carries the oxygenated blood away from the heart, means which is bringing the oxygenated blood to the cells. So these arteries, they become small branches and branches, so that should be reach the each cell of our body. So the arteries that divide and the oxygenated blood that is received by all the cells, that is called as the capillaries. These are the smallest blood vessels. So the arteries that undergo branching and form the capillaries. Then veins, always they carry the blood to the heart. So veins, they carry the blood to the heart. So these veins also divide and form the capillaries. These capillaries, they carry the blood which contain the carbon dioxide to the veins. Then through the veins, it reaches the heart, then heart to the lungs for purification. So this is how the exchange of the gases that takes place in our body, exchange of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. On reaching an organ or tissue, the artery divides into smaller and smaller vessels to bring the blood in contact with all the individual cells. All the individual cells, they should contain the oxygen. They need the oxygen. So the smallest vessels have walls which are one cell thick and are called capillaries. So what is capillaries? So that is very small blood vessels which emerges from the arteries and the veins which carries the blood. Okay, so that is called as the capillaries. The last topic in today's session, that is about the limb. What is limb? Limb, it is the colorless fluid present in the intercellular space. Why it is the colorless liquid? It also involved in the circulatory system of our body. So we are learning about the limb. It is a colorless fluid present in the intercellular space. It is colorless because the red blood cells are absent. But how it is formed? How lymph is formed in our body? It is formed by plasma which escapes from the capillaries. See here, the blood is flowing in this capillary. So this is the capillary. The blood that is flowing inside the capillary. So some plasma and some cells from the blood that drain out from the walls of these blood vessels, and they are stored in the lymph and lymphatic vessels. Okay, so and again this lymph also have the lymph vessels and lymph capillaries, and they brought this uh, lymph into the heart again. Okay, so this is about the lymph. See here, here also you can find how the lymph is formed. Sorry. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fat from intestine and drains the excess fluid from the extracellular space back into the blood. As I said, the digested and absorbed fat from the intestine also that carries and drains excess of fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Again, the fluid that back into the blood. So that is about the lymph. So this in this topic, we learnt about the transportation in human beings. What about the plants? Do they have any special system for the transportation? Do they have any organs? No, there is no organs. That is in case of the plants, but the plants they'll also perform the transportation of the water and the food. That is because of the some tissues present in the plant, so that we are learning in the next class. Okay, so before that, so please recall what are all the points that we have studied in this uh, class. First we learnt about the respiration, right? Just you recall respiration. Sorry, yes, the first point we learned about the respiration in today's class. And the second important life process, that is about the transportation, especially in case of the human beings. So in respiration also we studied the two types of the respiration, then aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and the respiration in human beings. So that is about the lungs and all respiratory passage and all that we have studied. And the transportation. So transportation that includes the arteries, veins and capillaries, and also the muscular organ that is called as heart. Okay, so about heart, how the transportation of the blood takes place in heart. So everything that we have studied in this topic. Then in the next class we are going to study about the transportation in plants and excretion. Okay, so excretion both in animals and plants, so that we are studying in the next class. I hope this class is uh, very useful for you people, and I hope you understand the important points from this chapter. Okay, so if you have any doubts you can ask. Any doubts? Yes. Thank you, dear students. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.